you better start listening and paying attention to risk-based vulnerability management as opposed to the severity model. And I'll get into a little bit about what's different there. And so what Gartner calls out here on their document are a few things. The first thing is you don't try and patch everything, right? As an organization, depending on how big you are, depending on how many vulnerabilities you may have, you may not be able to throw enough money and resources or bodies at those vulnerabilities. Some of those vulnerabilities may not be patchable, right? There may not be a remediation path. It may be a configuration issue that's still a vulnerability. So that's the first part. The next three parts are very critical to understand because they relate directly to our platform, directly to the Avanti risk-based vulnerability management platform. The first is you need to use multiple threat intelligence feeds. And within our platform, we actually have about 115 threat feeds that are correlating at least every 24 hours. Some of those actually update every 15 minutes. So it's as real time probably in the market as you're going to get on what that exposure looks like. There's also a number of researchers that are out combing the dark web. We've got about 70 of those folks. They're in and out of these chat rooms. They're conversing with Mr. and Mrs. Bad Hacker. And what they're determining is what these folks are using to attack businesses, right? And we call that trending. And so our trending data that you'll see here shortly are vulnerabilities that have been used in attacks in the last 30 days, right? So these are the high profile ones, maybe the log4js if you want to relate it to something. That's the first two. The third part is the internal asset criticality component. As we all know in our own environments, we have some devices that are more important than others. So let's break that down. In the conference room, you've got an IP phone. It's connected to the network, but there's no data on it. It's not very important. But if a hacker got in, maybe they could move laterally, potentially. That's probably going to be scored as a 1. On the opposite side of it, we have those servers, right, that may be running your e-commerce site. They maybe have your personal information, maybe some credit card information. Very, very critical. We're going to score that as a 5. So what that scoring methodology does is it interacts with the other algorithms within the platform to either raise or lower the severity or the risk of that device depending on the asset criticality. So 3 big things: threat intelligence, attacker activity, and being able to score your own internal devices. So when we start to talk about vulnerability management as a whole, right, there's a lot of organizations that are unfortunately on the left-hand side of the screen that we need to move to the right. And when you look at the left-hand side of the screen, this is kind of legacy. This is when you're just relying on CVSS scores, right, CWEs, you're relying on the severity that is coming from your scanner or that comes from national vulnerability databases around the world. Unfortunately, that becomes a very stale and static approach. As you may realize, NVDs don't update very often, whether it's 2.0 or 3.0. They're not necessarily reanalyzing all the vulnerabilities depending on the exploits or the weaponization associated with them. And so what all that kind of computes to is a very reactive process. And unfortunately, if you have a reactive process in your vulnerability management practice, there is a strong possibility of a breach. Whereas if you move people to the right-hand side, and where we want to take people is, first of all, we prioritize vulnerabilities based on real-world threat. I talked about those 115 threat feeds, those 70 researchers that are out combing the dark web. They're updating this platform regularly, right? Even if you're only scanning, weekly or monthly or maybe even quarterly, right? You still get updated context because your scanner brings in data to our platform. We update those feeds continuously to give you that real world threat context. When you look at that becomes a very dynamic program, right? Your scoring is now based on weaponization. There's a number of predictive analysis in there. We have some proprietary calculations and things that Dr. McCamala has engaged into our platform. And because all of this, your risk-based vulnerability management process becomes very proactive. How can we stay a step ahead of the bad guys? And how can we make your team like snipers, not like infantry? So the difference between legacy and risk-based. So the foundation to our platform, and this is critical to everything, the foundation to our platform is what we call our vulnerability knowledge base, our VulnKB. And that is essentially that combination of those 115 threat feeds, the 70 researchers, all combining everything from all of the manufacturers' websites, all of our proprietary sources, our paid sources, you name it. We combine that all into one dashboard. And that one dashboard becomes the foundation to the platform itself. It also provides an amazing tool to do any kind of threat hunting that you have to do. So if you have an organization where you have threat hunters out there, this will save them tons and tons of time and resources because it's all consolidated into one. As you can see here on my slide, I've taken snapshots from November 29th, 2021 till this morning. And unfortunately, the number of vulnerabilities continues to rise at an incredible rate. Just take a look at your June 20th to August 9th, right? Let's call it less than 45 days. We went from 279,000 vulnerabilities in the universe to this morning, there was 281,000. So how we look at from a risk-based perspective is what is weaponized. So we've got 39,000 that are weaponized. What have remote code execution or privileged escalation? And as a pen testing firm, if our pen testers have those two components, when we do a pen test on your organization, we can pretty much move as laterally as we want. We can get any credentials that we want, a lot of domains, you name it. So RCP, very dangerous. Obviously, if you support an organization that is a ransomware target, a hospital, manufacturer, that is of big concern to you. And then here is the last one. What is trending? So as of this morning, 104 of the 281,000 vulnerabilities had been used in attacks in the last 30 days. This is how you take a sniper approach. If your organization remediates these 104 and then moves on to the 376, then to the 10,500, your organization is decreasing your overall attack surface. You're making yourself more secure, and you are eliminating most, if any, paths for a breach. So take a note at this 281 and 104, because when we pop into the platform here, I will show you the VulnKB live. I updated this about 4 hours or so, maybe 5 hours ago. So it will be interesting to see if that's changed. Like I said, some of these threat feeds update every 15 minutes. This stat, 76% of vulnerabilities currently exploited by ransomware groups were discovered before 2020. Hopefully this doesn't surprise everybody. We produce a comprehensive ransomware report quarterly with our sister company Securin, and the data that comes out of that is amazing. If you guys are interested in that, we can get that link over to Paul and Matt, and they can provide that. But it is an amazing resource for you guys to keep updated, keep abreast at all of what's going on from a ransomware perspective. But what this is telling me is that those hackers, right, they are going after very old vulnerabilities because we, as security professionals, are so concerned about the latest and the greatest, the shiny new thing, the Log4js of the world, that we're not even thinking or looking at those old CVEs, 2010, 2008, 2016. And you'll see when I pop into the VulnKB how many of those old vulnerabilities are not even rated by CVS. They don't even have a CVSS score, either 2.0 or 3.0, and that they're trending. So that will be a thing that I'll show you guys when we pop in. All right, let's talk a little bit about this platform that I keep referring to. So this platform is a cloud-based platform. Nothing needs to be installed on your premise other than if you have a prem-based scanner. And in those cases, we deploy a small, essentially an OVA. It's a Cloudflare tunnel that is on the same VM as your on-prem. So like if you're a Rapid7 customer, or maybe a Tenable Nessus, then if it's on-prem, then we deploy this and it creates this one-way SSH tunnel out to our platform. So that's the only thing that needs to be installed on-prem. Other than that, everything is in the cloud. So let's take a look at what we do. So when we start to talk about vulnerability management, I want you guys to start thinking outside the box a little bit here. Yes, we have our classic network scanners, your Tenable, your Qualys, your Rapid7. We have those endpoint tools, the CrowdStrike's, the Taniums. Windows ATP Defender is a great one. They actually OEM Qualys. That's a phenomenal tool. If you're using that, please, please, please take advantage of that. Any kind of asset management, if you have any faith in your CMDB, we can pull those in. We can correlate the tags that are done in there. If you're doing pen test findings or pen tests, we can bring those pen test findings in, any kind of bug bounties. That's all on the network side and the infrastructure side. When you start to talk about the application security, orchestration, and correlation side, now it's a mouthful, we'll call it ASOC. We can take in all of your DAST, your SAST, your OSS, your container scanners, so your Black Ducks, your JFrogs, your Acunetics, your Burp Suite, Veracode, checkmarks, you name it. I think in my second life, I want to be a creator of names for DAST and SAS tools. Once again, on the pen test findings, we can bring those in. So the beauty about the platform itself is that it is 100% REST API. So there's not any data that we can't get in or any data that we can't get out via scripts if we don't have what we call our smart connectors, which you're looking at here on the screen, and we'll show it to you live in the platform shortly. We also have a way called our generic uploader, which is a tool that allows you to bring in any CSV that has vulnerability data. So for instance, your pen test findings would come in that way. It's essentially you building your own parser or scanner within our platform. Once we get your data into our platform, the first thing that we have to do, and this is the very critical thing, is we apply our data, the Vuln knowledge base, VulnKB, to your data. And when we do that, we call that our vulnerability risk rating. And what we're doing is the process of taking and assessing all of your highs and criticals first. If that high and critical, if it does not have weaponization, if there's no weaponization on it, if there's no RCEPE, there's no ransomware kit, they're not trending, we actually take those highs and criticals and we drop them to mediums. At the same time, I guarantee you that there's going to be lows, mediums, hopefully not any informationals, but there may be some informationals that may have those components. They may be weaponized, they may have RCEP, and they may be trending. And we're gonna raise those to highs and criticals for you, okay? That's what we call our vulnerability risk rating, and I'll show you the benefits here on the next slide. After we've done that, then we need to organize the data. This is critical to move to the next step, which you'll see, which is prioritization. To organize your data, we need to look at it a number of different ways. We can group your assets by technology stack, all your Windows machines, all your Linux machines, all your security cameras, all your door locks, you name it. We can also do it by geography, right? Your Toronto location, your Denver location, your New York City location. We want to organize and label those groups based on who's probably going to be doing the remediation or the patching of that, right? Who's in charge of those groups. The beauty about it is that assets can live in multiple groups. So for instance, if Matt is in charge of the Linux machines and I'm in charge of the Windows machines, I don't want to see his data. He doesn't want to see mine, okay? However, Paul, as the CISO of the organization, wants to see everything. And then Paul, as the CISO, wants to evaluate which of his teams is doing the work, which aren't doing the work, and which of the areas of his group, right, of his organization are the most susceptible to a breach. So there's a lot of different ways that we can slice and dice and put this into groups. Then we can start the prioritization, right? We prioritize things based on risk, not on severity. So it may be a mind shift within your organization, but it's the right mind shift and it's going to make your teams much more efficient and you're not going to be wasting time anymore. After that, we need to report up, right? If Matt and Josh are in the trenches and we're doing all the remediation and Paul, as the CISO, is reporting up to the board of directors or the CEO or CFO, we have different audiences, right? Paul wants to know from Matt and I how many vulnerabilities we have in our environment, right? Maybe which are our riskiest areas of our environment. But at the same time, that's the last thing that Paul wants to communicate to the board of directors, right? First of all, they're not technical folks. They don't understand CVSS. They don't understand high criticals, low mediums, informationals, trending, you name it, all the acronyms that we use. And so what Paul wants to communicate to the board of directors is the work that's been done, right? This is the number of vulnerabilities that we've remediated. This is our risk sense security score. It went from 550 up to 725. And I'll show you how that's calculated here shortly. But those are the kind of things that Paul wants to communicate to the board so that he can continue to work on more budget, so that we can get more headcount, so that we can remediate more, right? Bottom line. So our dashboards and reports are all configurable. So depending on who your audience may be, we can configure it all depending on that. Very flexible. And then finally, we need to automate some of this stuff. In the security business, we end up doing things over and over and over again. And so we have a number of playbooks that we can deploy that can maybe move assets between groups. We can, if a vulnerability associated with a ransomware family comes into your environment is detected, we can automatically assign that to Matt to start triaging. If a vulnerability comes in that we know can be an automatic ticket generation, right? Depending on who your ticket is with ServiceNow or Jira or Avanti ITSM, we can automatically assign a ticket out to the groups to start triaging. So that's the playbooks. How can we automate some of this stuff and give your security team maybe a little time back? And then finally, workflows. Who's tired of tracking false positives and risk acceptance on spreadsheets, right? So within the platform, you're able to do all of that with deadlines and support documentation, you name it. And then, by the way, everybody's concerned about SLAs. So how do we continue to track that SLA? And you can do those SLAs by group, you can do it by device, you can do it by organization. There's a number of different ways that we can do it. So that's all about vulnerability management. That's only a piece of the pie, right? So how do we complete this entire workflow? How do we plug into your ticketing system? If you have a SOAR SIM, how do we make your SOC more efficient by only concentrating their work on those vulnerabilities that are actually weaponized, as opposed to all those false positives that may be coming from their SIM? And then obviously Avanti's patch is a market leader and a great way to plug everything in. But essentially what you're looking at here on your screen is a full end-to-end workflow of asset and vulnerability identification, prioritization, and then remediation. Powerful tool. Here's just another way to kind of look at VRR. Like I said, this may be a mind shift for some of your organizations, the movement of highs and criticals down to mediums if they're not weaponized, and vice versa, those informational lows and mediums up to highs and criticals. So essentially how we do that is we take all of the data that comes from the scanner itself, whether it's CVSS 2.0, 3.0, the scanner reported severity, if that's in there. We take all of that, we correlate that with our vuln KB, and then we rescore everything. So just another way to look at vulnerability risk rating. Obviously, you can see that there are a ton of benefits, right? We now make you like snipers. We now have you concentrate on vulnerabilities that are actually weaponized, because unfortunately, if you guys are wasting time on vulnerabilities that aren't weaponized, you're flat out wasting time, right? So how do we make you guys more efficient? So a lot of benefits of VRR. To stay ahead of them, keeping up with the CWE top 25, OWASP top 10, right? We're leveraging all of these threat feeds, 115 plus, and that's a very, very conservative number, by the way, because there are a number of threat feeds that feed those threat feeds. So it's actually probably 150 to the power of something, right? 1, 2, or 3, I have no idea. But the researchers that are out there combing the dark web is also part of that. So a lot of benefits of the VRR. Our other scoring methodology is called our Risk Sense Security Score, RS3 score. And this is the ability to communicate the risk of your organization to non-technical folks. And so what we've done here is we've created an RS3 score that looks, feels, smells, and acts just like the US credit score. So somewhere between 300 and 850, every device gets a score. Obviously, if you're in the 300s, you have terrible credit, you're not going to be able to buy that house or that car. And by the way, you're probably going to get breached. If you have a score of 750 or 800, right, you get your nice little, multi-million-dollar house and your Mercedes Benz. And by the way, you're probably a pretty secure organization. We did this purposefully so that, remember, when Paul is the CISO and he can report up to the CFO or the CEO or the board of directors, they understand it, right? Like I said, those folks probably don't understand CVSS 2.0. They don't understand OWASP 25. They don't understand exploits. They just know that they don't want to be breached because they don't want to end up on the front page of the newspaper or the internet. So this is a way that we can communicate up the stack through the organization. And by the way, if you have some cyber insurance, this is a great way to communicate to your insurance company about how secure you may be as well. So we come up with that number by combining all the data from the scanner again. We look at our risk fusion, which is our vuln KB, the 115 threat feeds. The accessibility, is that address internally or externally facing, right? And you can manipulate that as well in the platform if you know that it's behind a firewall or a WAF or something. And then if you remember a few slides ago, we talked about the business criticality that Gartner called out. This is that scale of 1 to 5, the IP phone being a 1, the server being a 5. Combine all that together, every single device gets an RS3 score. You aggregate those up to a group level, then you can do it to an organization level. When you look at the benefits of the RS3 score, not only does it help you monitor, it helps you normalize, right? You're bringing in all these different vulnerability scanning tools that all have different methodologies. So it normalizes everything across, makes it that unified scoring model. You're able to manage risks against groups. I've talked with a lot of CISOs who actually gamify this, right? They take the top, the top 5 groups in their organization and they pair them up with the bottom 5 groups of their organization and they have them work together. Why are we doing such a better job remediating, X, Y, and Z as opposed to A, B, and C? So there's a lot of ways that your organization can work together to manage that. I want to talk about a couple different workflows, right? I put together a lot of pieces of the puzzle. Now let's start to bring it all together. So when you talk about a recommended vulnerability management workflow, there's a lot of different ways that you can look at it. But the slide that I showed you earlier, this just kind of blows it out a little bit more. Obviously, you've got your infrastructure, your code scanners, depending on, who you're using in the market. Once again, don't be limited. Don't limit yourself to the connectors that we have. Remember, I talked about the generic, Resense generic uploader that we can take any CSV in. So think outside the box. Once we do that, we can plug into your ITSM system, your Jira's, your ServiceNow, you name it from Ivanti, we can plug it all in. Have your CMDB interact with all of this so that we know when that ticket gets assigned, it automatically gets assigned to Matt because he's tagged in the CMDB. So whether you believe in your CMDB or not, we also have tagging capabilities within our platform. So that's another way that you can do it. So, just a couple additional benefits when you start to talk about risk-based vulnerability management. Obviously, the advantage of the RS3 score, being able to consolidate. I mentioned being able to share that with your insurance provider if you guys have any kind of cyber insurance. You want to be very effective and efficient in remediating those findings so your patch management tool can be more efficient. And we can talk a little bit about that, how, for instance, Avanti's EPM or ISEC can get prioritized via the RiskSense platform and then taken directly into EPM or ISEC. Any kind of outside vulnerability management practices that you're doing, your penetration testing, your bug bounties, all that can be brought into the platform. And once again, I cannot stress enough that this is now a full end-to-end vulnerability management process, right? From everywhere from scanning it, right, to all the way till patching it. And then there's a lot of ways that the platform can communicate proactively out to you, whether that's via Slack or Teams. And so if you have a vulnerability that's identified that's associated with a ransomware, that Slack can, a Slack message can automatically go out. Or if your RS3 score drops 20 points or 50 points, something just happened. So there's a lot of ways to get notified via that. When you start to talk about vulnerability management combined with patch automation, here at Ivanti, as you know, we have a number of tools, and Paul and Matt can help you guys more with that. But the main problem between those two is that it's usually different budgets, it's different teams in most cases, and there's a fence that usually sits between those two. And so a lot of the times the security team does the scanning, they build that spreadsheet, and then they throw it over with hopefully a pivot table attached. And then on the other side, that ops team catches that, they open that spreadsheet, and what do? They probably pick the easiest patches, right? Not necessarily the ones that are most critical. And so it's a very time consuming, it can cause a lot of errors. It's a lot of it's left up to interpretation, but more and less it is not efficient, right? And so how can we foster that collaboration between the two? Well, with the RiskSense platform, vulnerabilities automatically get prioritized. So that box is checked. When the ops team goes into the RiskSense platform, here's your list of top 5 or top 10 or top 20, right? Based on risk, not based on what's the easiest thing to patch. That's the first thing. Because of the SLAs, everybody's now working together, if you will, as an orchestra, right, to produce this beautiful piece of music. Everybody's following the SLAs, everybody's on the same sheet of music. So you are ensured, hopefully, that you get timely resolution of these vulnerabilities within your environment. So here's another workflow, if you will, that kind of combines security, operations, how they come together, the value prop of it, and how it actually works out with our own EPM ISAC. So essentially how it works is that the scan comes into RiskSense, RiskSense prioritizes it, we take a CSV export into EPM or ISAC, and then that actually builds a patch group for you. You press go, and then you are off and running on those. So it's a very simple process. So at this point, I'm going to open up and see if there's any, or actually Matt and Paul, if you can help me, are there any questions before we actually go into the platform? And I can go back slides too to help explain things.
Yes, we do have one question. Do you offer a demo environment for this?
We sure do. Yep. And a demo environment, I would imagine, meaning like a proof of value or a proof of concept, a POC or a POV. Is that correct? Am I interpreting that question?
Yes, I would assume so. Thank you for answering.
Yep. Any other questions? Anybody want to come on? I don't know if anybody's muted. If anybody wants to come off mute and ask about how the sausage is made, or if you guys just want to look at this cool platform that I've been talking about.
I think we should move right into the demo of the platform, Josh, and we'll monitor the Q&A session in here.
That sounds great. All right, just a quick another technology check. Can you still see my screen, or do I need to refresh?
You're good.
Perfect. All right. So I don't know if of the individuals that are on the phone, but I wanted to start at this view here. So this is actually, so the platform itself is actually a true multi-client dashboard. So if you are part of an MSSP, if you have an organization or you're part of an organization that has done a number of acquisitions and you're still kind of siloed, any kind of business or use case where you would need a multi-client view, this is essentially what you would be looking at. So as you can see here, I've got 33 total clients that I'm looking at. My overall RS3 score is 622. And so there's a lot of ways that this can benefit you. Now, if you're not in one of those buckets and you just want your own client, right, you would essentially pop into something that looks like this. Now, like I said before, your platform is very customizable, right? And so I have set my landing page to my groups page, okay? Because I'm the CISO of this demo client organization, and I want to look, the first thing that I want to see when I log in is what is my most risky group and what is my most secure group. You can set this to be anything, your landing page, but this is personally how I like to do it. It also gives you guys the quick, visible way of breaking up your environments, right? Whether it's Linux Americas, your DCOM group, what's trending, my SAST, my DAST, my Windows environment, you name it. But there's a lot of ways to do this. Within the platform, everything becomes a visual query. So as you hover over here, you can see that, if I clicked on this 41, it would take me into the critical and high risk groups. So I'm going to do a couple things here. I'm going to enable descriptions as well, so that as we're going through this, you guys can kind of see what each of these widgets represents. And by the way, when I go to create or make my board presentation, I'm going to enable those as well. So if I do a leave behind, I'm not going to get 100 questions from the board of directors on what does this widget mean. So this platform becomes very user friendly. So within our platform, we have 6 pre-configured dashboards. We're currently sitting on the group overview, but let's just kind of quickly go through a few of these. So once again, I could land here if I wanted to. Here's my executive dashboard. This is telling me I've got 32,000 assets, 11,000 are weaponized. This is a demo environment, so please don't fire me over my remediation and my aging metrics report. But you can see here that my RS3 score currently, as a combined between my host and my application level, is a 549. Yeah, it's not great, right? I would much rather be up here in the 700s or 800s for that matter, but this is where I am. So within the platform, we've got about 90 of these widgets. So if I wanted to build my own dashboard, I could come in here and I could pick from a number of different categories and build my own dashboard depending on who my audience was. This widget I love. This is our kind of almost every widget has some interactions. So if I was to interact with this and I knew that I was bound by my CISA KEVs, I'm going to click on that, and if I want to keep it at the last 7, I can. If I want to go further out, I can. If I only want to look at my host level, I can do that. Then I can apply it, and I've just looked at, I now have 15,000 findings that are part of the CISA KEVs, right? If I wanted to drill into that, like I said, everything is a visual query. I pop right in, and then I can start triaging my 15,000 vulnerabilities that are part of the KEVs. When I get into this level, right, so I'm in the weeds here, folks, so stay with me. I'm a security analyst at this point. I can do a number of things within here. So first of all, I want to be able to, select all, for instance, because I've got 15,000, more than one page, I can create a widget, right? So if I want to build a specific widget or dashboard because of something that is new and shiny, like Log4j, I can build that so I can track it, right? I can build a view. I can share that view out with folks. If I ever need to export this, I can export it out. I can pick which categories, right? What line items I want to export out. Very, very customizable. If I need to tag all these, right? If this is a certain project or I need to tag it to an individual, I can tag it to an individual. If I want to create a workflow around it, right? I can create a workflow because I've identified that these are all false positives, or I'm accepting this risk and I'm going to accept it for 60 days. And here's my documentation so that when the auditor comes and we've accepted this risk, I can show him or her why we've done that. I can also take an action upon these items. I can add a note to it. I can assign it. I can assign it to Christopher Santiago, and have him start to work on it if he's in charge of all these. I can also create a ticket, right? I can go right out to my ServiceNow account if I'd like, and tie right in, or to my Avanti ITSM. So there's a lot of things that can be done within here. If I click on one of these, here's the information that's given to whoever's going to be doing it, right? So here's my host findings detail. You can see here that I picked it up via Nexpose. If I scroll down here, here's my plugin status. Oh, and by the way, the auditor just walked into my office, and he or she wants to know what's happened or what's going on with this vulnerability. So I've got a full history report of every time somebody touches it. So if I go back down here to the bottom, right, I've got my findings added. It was detected. It was assigned. Maybe a ticket was generated. Oh, somebody changed the severity on it. Looks like somebody closed the ticket. Guess what? They didn't reboot the system. The scanner redetected it, reopened it for rework. And so this is a way that your compliance team, your auditors, can now have a way to track everything that's touched within this vulnerability. As I continue to go down here, obviously tons of information: when it was discovered, ingested, who is assigned to, if there's any SLA associated with it already. Here's my vulnerability, right? So it was last trending on August 7th. That was Monday. The CVSS 2.0 has it a 9.3. Why was it trending? Well, it's got 36 threats associated with it. Here's the weaknesses. Here are all the threats. I can blow all these out. There's exploits, malwares. There's ransomware kits associated with it. Where's it coming from, right? Any kind of APT groups that may be using it. I can look at it from a footprint standpoint, right? Here's my possible solutions. Here's my patches, any kind of reference I need. Look, I already have my tickets opened, right? Avanti ITSM, it's already being worked. It's logged in there. I also have, there must be another component because it's also assigned to a ServiceNow. So if I want to find out how many devices this vulnerability is on, I've got a finding footprint, any kind of tag that has come in from the CMDB or that we've created within our platform. So an enormous amount of information that your teams can use to eliminate them going out and Googling themselves to death, right? I can even, up here, I have a links button. I can even look to see what Google, MITRE, and NVD have to say about this as well. So a lot of flexibility. This entire platform is very robust when it comes to filtering. So I can filter any way, anyhow. I can filter on anything I want, but it's very, very flexible when it comes to that. Let's go back and show you a couple other dashboards. Here's our prioritization dashboard. I love this one because this is telling me if I'm remediating the right stuff, right? Here's my open findings funnel versus my closed. So a lot of different ways to look at this. Before I go any further, though, I actually forgot. I want to show you something more on this executive funnel. So we talked about moving your organization from severity to risk, okay? So I'm going to toggle back here really quick. Once again, everything's interacting. I'm going to go back to the severity model. This is what my scanner is telling me. My scanner is telling me that I have, 500,000 highs and criticals that I need to go out and remediate. I better have a huge team and I better have an unlimited budget because that's a lot of vulnerabilities. In actuality, what we're going to be showing you is here is what you need to pay attention to. Risk Sense is telling you that you only have 62,000 criticals and 235,000 highs that are weaponized, right? So roughly 300,000 of these over here are wasting your time. But in actuality, if I go a couple more buckets down, if I go down to trending, I'm looking at 1,500, right? This is a manageable number. I have now become a sniper. I can attack these 1,500. When I'm done with those, I'll move up and do these 42,000 of remote code execution, privilege escalation. And if I have a little bit of leftover time, I'll attack these almost 400,000. But it's way better than these. The other thing to concentrate and look upon is what's weaponized. I have weaponization across all of my Chumley scale when I look here. If I'm concentrating on these, I don't have time to get to my lows, mediums, or informationals. But if I look at it from a risk perspective, I do. One other thing on this executive dashboard that I want to point out too is that prioritized view that goes to ops. Here's my top 50 high impact findings, right? This is what you send to your ops team. And in actuality, you take these 1474, you come in as a visual query, you take an action, and you assign it to a user, right? Or you assign it to a patch group. You create a patch group, you create a ticket. That's how easy it is. Let's go back to the prioritization dashboard. Please feel free to interrupt me, Matt, Paul, if there's questions that are coming up, I'm happy to go back. Prioritization dashboard, CISOs love this, right? What was ingested versus what was resolved. Once again, you can change this and interact. Maybe I want it not monthly, but maybe I want it weekly or daily. Once again, this is a demo environment, so some of my numbers aren't great. Please don't fire me. But a great view. I've got a number of CISOs that use this widget to report out. The beauty about being able to quickly create reports is that I can, depending on if you're on a Mac or a Windows machine, I can quickly build reports this way. I also have another way that I'll show you here in a second about some kind of pixel perfect reports if you're interested in those. Just different ways to show. Ransomware, obviously ransomware is a hot topic. If you're in one of those verticals that are a ransomware target, this is a great way that just looks at those ransomware families. This isn't necessarily telling you you have ransomware in your environment, but it's telling you your susceptibility to ransomware. So if you come in on a Monday morning and there was an attack over the weekend, and your CEO comes to you and says, "Hey, Matt, do we have any of that, that deja vu or petcha?" You can quickly come in here and look to see by ransomware family what that looks like. Very simple. If we go into the ASOC side of the house, application security orchestration correlation, so your OSS container, DAS, SAS scanners all come into here. Your OWASP 25, your OWASP top 10, same kind of thing, laid out the same way. But this is kind of that shift left, shift right mentality, right? DevSecOps component. So it's combining all those disparate tools. SLAs. Here's a dashboard built just for your SLAs. Once again, your SLAs can be based on a technology stack and or as a group. I love, like this findings due calendar. Sorry, it's a little sparse because we're not remediating a whole lot, but I can tell you that on July 6th, right, I had one host finding that I missed. I can quickly pop into that and assign it out to somebody. That's how easy it is to go through this platform. The reports that I quickly talked about, the pixel perfect reports, we've got kind of 5 canned reports, very simple, very easy to understand. Let me download one of these so that you guys can kind of see what that looks like. Very easy to, oops, sorry about that. Very easy to describe to folks. It has all the definitions in it. You can run it on groups if you want. You can run it on devices. You can, depending on how your organization is set up. I've got 15,000 assets in this sample. My RS3 score is 613. What's my distribution? What's my internal versus external exposure looking like? If I want to look by criticality, right? Here are all my IP phones. Here are all my servers. That explains why my RS3 score is lower, right? I need to raise that up. What's my riskiest group? My app web goat is my worst. Looks like, one of my SaaS is my best. My overall network versus application vulnerabilities. And then it gets into a little bit more description about my top 10 groups by RS3 score, by my application teams, and then just an appendix explaining that RS3 or that credit-like model. When we bring in your data, we talked a lot about those smart connectors. Here are all those smart connectors. These are the ones that are currently configured to bring in data for us. I can pull up the history of things. Once again, if it's cloud-based, cloud to cloud, it's very easy to do one of these connectors. If you have an on-prem scanner of some sort, then we deploy that small Cloudflare agent, one-way SSH tunnel, one single agent, not an agent on all of our things, but one single agent that's on the box that is, where your scanner is. But you can see here, I mean, the list just keeps getting longer and longer. We do releases. Those releases come in the form of connectors. They come in the form of dashboards. We're very aggressive when it comes to our releases. Here's that generic uploader, the ability to bring in any CSV. On the application side, you can see here everything from Aqua to Burp to check marks, you name it. Ticketing system, asset management, compliance, patch, very, very comprehensive. Don't let this list hinder you though, because we can get everything in because we're 100% API based. Playbooks, a number of playbooks we've built in this demo environment. There's 33 here, anything from moving applications, assigning ransomware, if a device hasn't been detected in 30, 60, 90 days, moving it into a DCOM group. That DCOM group is something that only maybe the administrator has access to or visibility, and I'm only going to look at it once a month, right? I just want to go in there and maybe I delete stuff. We emphasize, we never delete users or data within the platform because of that history button. Now, you can take things out of people's views, but we don't necessarily delete it unless you want to. So as you can see here, lots of different ways to build playbooks. SLAs, same kind of thing. You can talk about a lot of different ways on how to group SLAs together. I can build my own SLA. I can do that as a default as an organization or as a group. I can create my own asset criticality based on my own asset criticality. I can say, okay, I want my 5s to be a 2-day SLA because this is my e-commerce that produces $1 million a minute, right? Whereas my phone, maybe I drop that to 60 or 90. So lots of flexibility when it comes to how we organize that. And then finally, our vuln KB. So it looks like not much has changed. We're still at 281 and 104, but this is the 115 threat feeds, 70 researchers, you name it, that are correlating it. A couple things to point out on here is what's trending. Let's look at that first, right? So trending vulnerabilities, right? These are vulnerabilities that have been used in attacks in the last 30 days. What I gleaned from this is that the hackers are smarter than us, unfortunately, right? They are taking, first of all, very old CVEs, 2014, 2012, 2013, CVEs that don't even have a CVSS score, right? We have rescored them to be 10s and look at the number of threats associated with them and when they were published, right? So if I want to click into any of these, for instance, I can click into here. I can tell you that, we've got 91 threats associated with this. I've got 3 plugins. I've got 5 APT groups that are utilizing this, and it's only 11 fixes. Okay, great way to quickly assess whether this stuff may or may not be in your environment, right? If I scroll down here, these are a couple other things that I really like to take a look at is our vulnerability knowledge base versus other data sources. So unfortunately, I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but unfortunately, scanners themselves tend to decide which vulnerabilities they're going to build plugins for and detect, okay? So in a perfect world, right, I'm sure all of you have unlimited budgets and you have Tenable, Qualys, Rapid7, CrowdStrike, Tanium, and Windows ATP Defender because all you guys have unlimited budgets. That's what Matt and Paul have told me. So in that case, you have the greatest coverage in the world, right? We all know that that's a lie, and you only have probably 1 scanner, maybe 2, maybe 1 for your internal, 1 for your external, and then maybe you have an endpoint. So your coverage isn't as great as we would want it to be because of the plugins. But what this tool can help provide for you is if your scanner is not detecting or doesn't have a plugin for an associated CVE, you can at least come in here and do the research for yourself, right? As opposed to going out and Googling yourself to death. So a lot of different ways to think about it and triage and prioritize things based on what's in your environment or what may or may not be detected by a particular scanner.
Hey,
So
Josh,
I've
I'm
gone
gonna
on for about
jump
an
in.
hour, so. Yep, please.
Josh, I'm gonna jump in just solely in the essence of time. We only have just about 2 or 3 minutes here left. What I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of close this out with just a couple quick questions that we felt that were important ones. I think you recapped it. What platforms can we integrate with? I think it sounds like you covered that off on. Let's see. This is a layup. Hey, if I'm interested in having a personal conversation about this platform, who should I speak with? Hey, I'll take that one on the chin. Yeah, because I got that one. So allow me to drop up a quick one here for you. This way you folks know exactly how to reach us. We're winding up on time here. So I'm going to drop it. I'm going to drop it up on the screen here for you. Actually, I can't because I don't have control of it yet. Matt, could you give me control on the screen, please?
Yes, I can give it right now. All right, you should be good.
All right, folks. So, essence of time. If you're interested in having a conversation with the team, want to learn more about the Avanti product set, want to learn more about how risk-based vulnerability management can integrate with your existing infrastructure, you want to understand, cost, price, implementation, so on and so forth, very simply, reach out to us on a couple of different methods. sales@troymobility.com. This is going to cascade across our entire sales organization. A couple primary folks from a point of contact, myself, some of you on the call might know Sean McGee, our Director of Mobility Solutions. Feel free to reach out to Matt directly. We'll be able to quarterback, who's the right resource and try and get the right resources pulled together. Matt, were there any other questions that you saw that were real important ones there?
No, I haven't had any questions regarding the solution, but I have had a few questions regarding the gift card reward. So what we're going to do is after this webinar closes, we're going to go through the attendee list and qualify the attendees who have attended. And those who do qualify will be sending out those gift cards by tomorrow night.
Outstanding. Thanks, Matt. So just in closing, again, Josh, fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your insight. This has been super helpful for me, and I'm around this product. Hopefully it was super helpful for folks on the phone call. It's at 2 o'clock. We're right at time here. I want to thank everybody for taking your time. Hopefully you had a sandwich for lunch or you were able to give us your undivided attention. Big group on the call. Thank you so much. Hope you're all enjoying your summer. For those of you who I know had to take some time out of your PTO to come and join our webinar, super thank you to all. I hope to have the opportunity to speak with you all soon. Wish you an enjoyable summer and look forward to speaking with you all soon. Matt, Josh, thank you so much. Great webinar.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, everybody. You all stay well now.